All right. Well, welcome everyone to the, celebration and panel discussion of my recently published book, Religion Within the Limits of History Alone, Pragmatic Historicism and the Future of Theology. So it's November, so I'm going to begin with a few words of thanksgiving. Thanks to everyone in attendance today, whether in person or online. Thanks to all who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to make this book event possible. Thanks to my parents and my brother and sister-in-law who are watching from New Jersey. And to Victoria, my long-suffering partner and the love of my life. A special thanks to my three respondents, Reverend Andrea Johnson, Dean Kyle Roberts, who's joining us from Zoom land today, and Dr. Sheila Davani. Sheila, at your book event 20 years ago this year, you opened with these words. It is both an exhilarating and very humbling experience to respond to fellow academics who have engaged my work with such seriousness and respect. That's exactly how I feel. Thank you, all three of you, for the gift of critical engagement. On a beautiful Saturday, and cracked open Pragmatic Historicism, a Theology for the 21st Century by Sheila Davani, who at the time taught modern religious thought at the Iliff School of Theology. By the end of the weekend, I had completed the book and started to work on my pitch to Victoria. We have to move to Colorado. I have to go study with Sheila Davani at Iliff. Well, we did move, and I did go study with Sheila. And friends, it was one of the best decisions I have ever made, truly. My studies at Iliff commenced in January of 2001. At student orientation, I spotted Sheila across a crowded room. I worked up the courage to introduce myself and proceeded to embarrassingly but charmingly gush about her book, and she loves that. Pragmatic Historicism was hot off the press, so she was surprised that I had already read it and even cited it in my application to Iliff. But what Sheila did not yet realize is that I eat, sleep, and breathe theology. She did not yet realize that this was the theology I had been searching for, a theology I could actually believe in. She did not yet realize, I did not yet realize how much of an impact her book would have on me. Friends, more than anything else, my book is a sort of sequel to her book. We all know that the sequel is rarely as good as the original, and that is definitely true in this case, truly. Nevertheless, Religion Within the Limits of History Alone is my modest attempt to examine some of the theological implications and possibilities of a pragmatic historicist perspective. Before we go any further, I should probably define pragmatic historicism. Pragmatic historicism is a type of historicism. And what is historicism? Historicism is the notion that to be is to be historical. For the historicist, everything that exists is created and conditioned by history, by the particularities of time and chance, situation and environment. Everything that exists is in flux in process. Everything that exists is unique, relational, contextual, impermanent, perspectival, and historically relative. And so is everything human. Historicism underscores the utter historicity of human existence. No different than any other species, we humans emerged from the contingent developments of evolutionary history. And everything we make is a product of history. All of our truths and values, thoughts and experiences, institutions and practices, texts and stories, religions and theologies are finite and fallible human constructions that are emergent from particular times and places, situated in specific contexts, cultures, and traditions, subject to change and transformation, shaped by language, perspective, and interpretation, and inextricably linked with economic and material circumstances and the complex operations of power, privilege, ideology, and social location. Historicism arose in 18th and 19th century Germany, and my book engages a handful of prominent German historicists, most notably Ernst Troeltsch. However, I primarily trace and defend a trajectory of historicism that developed in the United States, a trajectory that Sheila calls pragmatic historicism. What makes this trajectory of historicism pragmatic is its insistence that ways of thinking, acting, and being, including religious ways of thinking, acting, and being, are tools that enable us to orient ourselves in the world and endow our lives with meaning and purpose. And we assess those tools in terms of the forms of life they make possible and the consequences they engender in the real world. What ramifications do they have for our children and our children's children? Do they alleviate suffering and make existence more bearable? Are they humane, liberative, and true? How effectively do they confront the crises facing our species and our society? Obviously, then, pragmatic historicism is rooted in classical pragmatism, but it also draws from several other related traditions of American religious and philosophical thought, including process philosophy, radical empiricism, religious humanism, and religious naturalism. In the first half of the 20th century, all of these traditions converged in the early Chicago School of American liberal theology, where George Berman Foster, Shailer Matthews, Shirley Jackson Case, and Gerald Burney Smith established a naturalistic, empirical, and socio-historical approach to the study of religion. As for contemporary thinkers, Sheila is my main conversation partner, but I also critically analyze the neo-pragmatist philosophies of Richard Rorty and Cornel West, and the pragmatic historicist theologies of Delwyn Brown, William Dean, both my beloved teachers, and Gordon Kaufman and Sally McFaig. Although it's impossible to summarize a dense and lengthy tome in a few minutes, and trust me, you don't want me to try, what I can do is tell you why I find pragmatic historicism so compelling. So I hope to give you a glimpse into the kinds of arguments I make in the book by briefly enumerating, in no particular order, the top 10 reasons why I am a pragmatic historicist. Sounds so much more exciting than it really is. Number 10, pragmatic historicism dissolves the dualism between culture and nature. Historicists place a lot of emphasis on the cultural and linguistic embeddedness of human life. But pragmatic historicists also pay attention to the wider natural contexts, the biological, ecological, planetary, and cosmic contexts in which human beings are located and on which we depend. Pragmatic historicism champions what I call a bigger historicism, a historicism that situates human history squarely within the history of nature itself. Number 9, pragmatic historicism takes materiality and embodiment seriously. Pragmatic historicists rebuke thinner historicisms that myopically focus on language and ideas and ignore the material realities that condition human life, economic and political systems, ideological commitments, power disparities, and structures of domination and subordination. Pragmatic historicists also attend to the affective, unconscious, non-linguistic, and physical dimension of human historicity, reminding us that human beings are primarily embodied organisms. As Dale Brown puts it, Sheila, we traffic with reality more with our bodies than our minds. Number 8, pragmatic historicism views particularity as a summons to communicate, not isolate. Sheila laments that the historicist stress on particularity and diversity often leads to the assumption that human communities and their inhabitants are fated to exist in insularity from one another with little hope of significant communication. For pragmatic historicists, on the contrary, our particularities, our differences, our unique historical textures are not an excuse for parochialism, ethnocentrism, or confessionalism. If anything, they enervate the instinct to hunker down in self-protective, incommensurable cloisters and motivate us to dialogue with each other and engage in mutual exchange, critique, and reconstruction. Number 7, pragmatic historicism embraces a theology of religions that is particularistic and pluralistic. Pragmatic historicism refuses to play down religious differences, honoring the thick particularity of the world's many religions. But pragmatic historicists see religious particularity as evidence of religious pluralism. The very fact that religions are irreducibly particular and plural is a good indication that none of them is final, absolute, or universal. That all of them are relative, partial, and human, and that the object of their quest is inexhaustible and ultimately mysterious. Particularity is also an opportunity for deep interreligious learning and an invitation to bring our unique insights, our diverse wisdoms to bear on the enormous problems threatening humanity worldwide. Global pandemic, white supremacy, climate change. Number 6, pragmatic historicism regards the past as formative, but not normative. Whatever else historicism is, it's the conviction that people live in and out of the various traditions bequeathed to them by prior generations. But pragmatic historicism interprets those traditions not as infallible and sacrosanct authorities that demand replication and uncritical submission, but as fluid and reconstructible habitations that form us and provoke ongoing reformation. We exist within the tension between continuity and change, givenness and agency. We're conditioned and constituted by our historical inheritances, but we creatively transform those inheritances for each new time, place, and cultural situation. Number 5, pragmatic historicism reveals that religions are bereft of pure and unchanging essences. Sheila points out that the cultural and religious worlds we inhabit are revisable, porous, messy, syncretistic, and multi-traditioned, evolving over time and interacting, even intermingling with each other in historically specific and mutually transformative ways. Accordingly, in a pragmatic historicist perspective, religions do not have stable grammars, pristine identities, impermeable boundaries, fixed narratives, or essential meanings. Rather, they are and always have been plural and contentious to the core, and continually challenged and reimagined as a result of new understandings and experiences, shifting historical circumstances, and encounters with others. Number 4, this is getting to the controversial stuff now. Pragmatic historicism balances constructivism with realism. So, pragmatic historicists talk a lot about the social construction of reality. Our laws and moral prescriptions, our conceptions of who we are and what we should be doing, our scientific theories and artistic endeavors, our philosophical worldviews and doctrines of God are exactly that, ours. They are made rather than found, to use Richard Rorty's language. However, pragmatic historicists are not one-sided constructivists. They are constructive realists. The true, the beautiful, the good, and even the sacred are cooperative achievements, interpretive dances between the creative imagination of historically situated human creatures and a real objective world that delivers pushback and feedback. See that glance. Number 3, pragmatic historicism gives up on the quest for certainty, but not the quest for truth. Pragmatic historicism calls for epistemic humility, placing considerable limits on our claims to truth. All of our beliefs, including all of our religious beliefs, are uncertain fallible, interpretive, contextual, tentative, deconstructible, perspectival, interest-laden, and vulnerable to criticism and correction. There are no ahistorical vantage points from which to view the world, no indubitable foundations on which to base our knowledge. But rather than settling for an anything goes relativism, pragmatic historicists, some of them anyway, accept a chastened correspondence theory of truth, hold on to the ideal of getting reality right, believe that there's such a thing as better and worse interpretations, and even entertain metaphysical questions and put forward provisional hypotheses about the nature of the cosmos. Number two, pragmatic historicism views theology as interdisciplinary, comparative, and public inquiry. The liberal theologians of the early Chicago school set out to reconcile religious faith with contemporary values and the verdicts of modern knowledge. And they contended that theological beliefs must be validated by reason and experience rather than by appeal to external authorities. Present-day pragmatic historicists share this liberal approach to theology and carry it further. Instead of only appealing to the confessional witness of their own traditions, theologians, they insist, should stake their claims and test their proposals publicly, across disciplinary divisions, across cultural boundaries, across religious lines, across the constructs of race, class, gender, and sexuality. Sheila ventures that the historicizing of theology should open up critical conversations with multiple voices, the voices of marginalized communities, the voices of different religions, the voices of science, cultural theory, and other branches of secular learning, the voices of non-human creatures, and the interconnected web of which we are a part. And the number one reason why I am a pragmatic historicist is that pragmatic historicism forges, or can forge maybe, a middle way between supernaturalism and atheism. Pragmatic historicists venture that deities and other conceptions of the religious ultimate are human imaginative constructions, to use Gordon Kaufman's language. However, in the highly experimental concluding chapter of the book, I argue that the humanizing and historicizing of the divine opens up the possibility of a religious and theological naturalism. God is a sacred convention that symbolically points to the boundless and wondrous depths of history itself, to nature in all its plurality and intricate relationality, beauty and terrifying ambiguity, creativity and ineffable mystery. Let the conversation begin.
Good morning. I'm Reverend Andrea Johnson, a Unitarian Universalist minister and current Doctor of Ministry student here at United. During my years in seminary, I have learned that Dr. Wheeler's true vocation is helping students connect to their calling and find their authentic theological voice. And for that, I am profoundly grateful. I'm delighted to take part in this event today because I have had the pleasure of thinking about and working with the ideas in this powerful and compelling book since 2016, and it has been instrumental in grounding my Unitarian Universalist ministry. As a minister then, to emphasize the pragmatic in pragmatic historicism, I will offer my remarks as a brief sermon. When I was an MDiv student here, my historical theology professor, said to the class one day, "There is no problem-free theology. You just have to figure out which problems you are willing to live with." To give you a bit more context, we were discussing various concepts of God. Specifically, we were considering the question, can God be conceived of as all good and all powerful? Although reflective of a classical definition of theism, answering in the affirmative to an understanding of God as both good and all powerful raises the specter of further questions. If God is all good and powerful, then why is there evil in the world? Why doesn't God prevent wars, pandemics, atrocities like the Holocaust, and systemic oppression? This class came early on in my seminary career, and my instinctive reaction was to choose an all-good God over an all-powerful one. From my social location as an economically and white-skinned privileged person, I found it easy to believe that with the help of an omnibenevolent force, the universe bends towards justice. But a few years later, a seminary colleague of color asked emphatically, "Andrea, do you really believe the universe bends towards justice? Do you not see the ongoing violence and oppression of Black and brown people in this country and all around the globe? Couldn't God just as easily be accused of being a white racist?" His question felt like a punch in the stomach. After I reflected further on the present state of our planet, the devastation we human beings are inflicting on it, each other, and especially the evil of systemic racism, my concept of an all-loving God died that day, but not the concept of God altogether. Embedded in my own story and in the stories I hear from my congregants is the question of ultimacy. What conception of God can achieve ultimacy? By which I mean, what concept can ground and orient us to make meaning of the universe we live, move, and have our being in? In other words, what conception of God is worthy of our worship? In Religion Within the Limits of History Alone, to help answer this question, Dr. Wheeler invites us to recognize, as he just explained earlier, that human beings and all of our concepts, theories, communities, texts, and religions are historical, conditioned by the contingent circumstances and tied to particular contexts. And he further contends that this historicity is not limited to the human sphere. On the contrary, everything in reality, from protons and planets to plants and persons, is a product of history. And to be historical, explains our distinguished guest, Sheila Davani, means that humans exist within the complex and interrelated matrices of the natural and humanly constructed history, and also requires that we recognize the role that class, race, gender, culture, and power play in our theological constructions. This recognition places considerable limits on what humans can affirm about truth and reality, and thus encourages that theologies be judged, as Sally McFaig affirms, on, quote, their compatibility with contemporary knowledge, their empirical fit, their fruitfulness for living, and their ability to light up human existence in profound ways. Given our unique historical context, a time when climate catastrophe, crumbling democracy, racial oppression, civil unrest, and an ongoing pandemic all contribute to a sense of the apocalyptic, what concept of God allows us to wrestle with questions of ultimacy? Anytime we talk about theology, we're talking about something beyond our smallness, something that we place as ultimate in our lives. Theologian Paul Tillich calls this ultimate concern, by which he means there is something in our lives that concerns us ultimately, the summative meaning from which all other meanings flow. A life of faith encourages us to strive to choose an object of ultimate concern that is truly ultimate. Not penultimate concerns like our in-group, our job, money, or even the relentless pursuit of justice. These things are transient, impermanent, and can often become idols. An ultimate concern is that which determines our existence or non-existence. What can satisfy such a definition? What determines whether we live or die? One answer to this question is nature. Why? Because nature is the greatest and most powerful thing we know. It can wipe human life off the face of this planet with the collision of an asteroid, and yet it is also the source of all things living and non-living. Nature generates, encompasses, sustains, transforms all that has ever been, shall be, and is now. Therefore, Wheeler, along with other religious naturalist theologians, argues for imagining the divine in significant proximity to the whole of natural reality, in all its creativity, ambiguity, inexhaustible possibility, radical contingency, incalculable complexity of meaning, and ineffable mystery. Wheeler terms his version of religious naturalism pantheism. The pantheistic naturalist equates divinity with all things, with nature in its entirety. God is not just within the world, God is the world. To be very clear, he explains, quote, pantheistic naturalists do not believe that nature is divinely ensouled or suffused by a divine mind, spirit, or consciousness. On the contrary, God is simply another metaphor for nature in all its mystery, plurality, ambiguity, vastness, materiality, impermanence, and wonder-working power. You might be wondering, why deify the world and call it God? Why not be an atheist? According to pantheist and Unitarian Universalist theologian Bernard Loomer, to deify the organic restlessness of the whole body of creation, his term for God, is to declare it holy ground. It is to affirm that it connotates an absolute claim on our loyalty, proclaims an adequate object of worship, bespeaks a priority with the ordering of our commitments, and signifies a richness of resources for living life at its depths. In response to the concept of pantheistic naturalism, from the perspective of a Unitarian Universalist minister, it is important for me to also consider the pragmatic questions raised by Dr. Wheeler in a recent essay, The Spirituality of Size, including what might a religious life look like from the pantheistic perspective? What sort of worship and devotion does this occasion? What religious and ethical actions does it evoke? According to Wheeler, orienting our life to the big God, a pantheistic God, a God that is both metaphysically and religiously ultimate, morally ambiguous and cognitively inexpressible, yields a number of valuable spiritual fruits. Let us reflect on three of them. First, pantheistic God metaphors foster an apophatic or mystical sensibility. They stand with the mystics of many traditions who say that whatever is divine is ultimately inscrutable, incomprehensible, and mysterious. God is partially revealed to us through reason, experience, art, science, and other modes of inquiry, but in the end, finally surpasses human understanding. Yet this mystery, its unimaginable vastness and sheer isness, can arouse spiritual affections of reverence, gratitude, awe, humility, dependence, terror, and silence. For me, from both a personal and ministerial perspective, the world, nature, is holy ground and contains the mysteries inherent within existence itself. This reality of nature abides when all else passes. It surrounds our life as the great abyss into which all things plunge and as the great source whence all they come. It is this understanding of ultimate reality that helps me remember that I am not in control of everything. It helps me get out of the little world of Andrea and into the world of wonder, mystery, awe, and gratitude. And by the little world of Andrea, I mean the idea that if I just do all the right things, like get A's in seminary, attend racial justice rallies, parent successful children, I'll be deemed worthy, successful, good, and absolutely in control of my own destiny. But what I truly long for is surrender. When I let go of all of that striving, I am more able to experience a sense of the eternal and realize a connection to all that is, was, and ever shall be. I realize, and I can help my congregation realize as well, that as human beings, we are not the peak and pinnacle of creation, but rather a part of the vast expanse of nature, our only home. Second, pantheistic God metaphors help us humbly acknowledge our littleness, impotence, and relative insignificance vis-a-vis a nature that is infinite, ancient, sovereign, and indifferent, sometimes even inimical to our plans and projects, our desires and dreams. Wheeler argues that the religious posture is one of deference to the real, and the spiritual vocation is to cultivate honesty, acceptance, authenticity, and courage in the face of the ambiguities and tragedies of life. Put differently, pantheism becomes an invitation to replace romanticism with realism, to let go of omnibenevolent deities, overreaching teleologies, optimistic cosmologies, and other reassuring fantasies, and just accept reality and divinity for what it truly is, namely a morally ambiguous web in which creation and destruction, joy and suffering, emergence and extinction, beauty and revulsion, order and chaos, purpose and pointlessness, life and death, good and evil are ontologically entwined. Such surrender can be fruitful spiritually for both individuals and communities. Third, embracing pantheism does not entail the abandonment of ethics and a submissive acquiescence to the status quo. Rather, it gives us a powerful incentive, even a framework for our human endeavors. To be sure, the possibilities of human flourishing and fulfillment depend on powers that transcend us, on realities and forces beyond human control. But regardless of whether we place the God of the Bible or the God of nature as our ultimate concern, I would argue that we humans are still tasked with the ordering of values and commitments. This is especially applicable in our justice work. For example, when we uncover and confront white privilege, we see complexity and ambiguity all around us. Again, just from a personal perspective, I see how my kids have benefited from the good schools in my neighborhood. And I understand I have gotten jobs because of the connections I have as someone with access to power. I see that I am living on land stolen from the Dakota people due to the government giving farmland to my Swedish immigrant great-great-grandparents. What is good for me has come at a cost to others, and there will not likely be any great reconciliation at the end of times by a just and good God. To acknowledge this tragic sense of life is not to condone evil, nor to become resigned to its devastations. It is to confront its inevitability with a realism that impels a commitment to the good. We realize it's up to us to liberate the oppressed and establish a just society. It's up to us to save our species and preserve the ecology of our home planet. In the end, our dedication to live out our ethics is the only gift we have to give back to God. In closing, I would like to lift up for our reflection, even meditation, Dr. Wheeler's affirmation that a religion of nature can provide a wide range of religious responses, ethical actions, and spiritual practices, from prayers of surrender to cries of protest, from rituals of lamentation to prophecies of deliverance. A religion of nature grants us the serenity to accept the things that cannot be changed, but also the incentive and courage to change the things we can. A religion of nature allows us to revere the mystery of the whole cosmos and to devote ourselves to the good. In the absence of a belief in an all-loving God who acts in the world, we are called to act on behalf of nature, which continually creates and sustains life. Let's be about this task together. Amen.
Hello, everyone. It's a privilege. It's an honor to be here on this occasion to celebrate the work of Dr. Demian Wheeler. It's been one of the great joys of my professional life at United to be both faculty colleagues with Dr. Wheeler and also now academic dean with Wheeler as one of our wonderful faculty members who contribute so much to the life of this school. This is an impressive work. My question as I dug deep into it became a really profound question that I had a hard time wrapping my mind around how can this work be the revision of a dissertation. It reads more like a mature, seasoned scholar who has deep facility in an impressive array of scholars, both modern and current, stretching across numerous discourses in both philosophy and theology, always represented by Wheeler with precision and charity, but also a scholar who's unafraid to take up clear and distinct positions and to enter into these wide-ranging conversations with confidence, also with epistemic humility. I find myself having so much agreement with so many things argued for and proposed here: the value of history for understanding and acting in the present, advocating critical realism and a chastened correspondence theory of truth, critique of the overreach of postmodern constructionism, the proposal for a fallibilism, a non-foundationalism or constructive non-foundationalism, as Wheeler, I believe, calls it, and the decisive argument that pragmatic historicism should retain or recover, but certainly not reject, metaphysics. In some ways, this latter plea is the most interesting and provocative of Wheeler's many constructive arguments and proposals in this bold volume. Wheeler argues for a responsible and epistemologically humble pluralism vis-a-vis inclusivism, and in particular, that of the particularist sort. Wheeler has a very sophisticated understanding of theology of religions and an astute argument for pluralism, and a compelling, if not to me ultimately convincing, critique of inclusivism. That said, I have to wonder at a purely emotional level, maybe not purely, but at an emotional level, what does one give up when one crosses the Rubicon, to use Wheeler's phrase, from inclusivism to pluralism? This may not be a fair question in an academic context, but we are a seminary, and historicism includes human emotion, of course, and religion is nothing if not also, or including, emotions. For those who were formerly deeply committed to a particular religion, does becoming a pluralist involve a sense of loss? Or is that sense of loss outweighed by other gains? There's a more substantive question behind that potentially patronizing question, one might argue. The particularist inclusivist can retain a posture, I think, of passion. I'm not doubting Dr. Wheeler's passion for a moment, actually, but passion and conviction toward or within a particular religious position. And that passion and conviction and feeling is funded by or fueled by perhaps one's own religious framework. Isn't part of religion as religion the pathos of passion toward its object, funded by a sense, or at least a belief or conviction in its truthfulness? It's a message so compelling, it's worth sharing, or at a minimum, perhaps even worth, or maximum, worth staking one's life or metaphysical claims upon. My Kierkegaardian stripes are showing here, which is a tip of where things are going next. As Wheeler acknowledges in chapter 6, I believe, historicism itself is a metaphysic. That's an important acknowledgement in my view. Reminds me of Augustine's dictum that the past is past, the future has not yet occurred, the present is all we have. If the past is truly past, can we really base our understanding of everything on history? Does the Lessing's ditch between the past and the present not haunt us irrecoverably here? History itself is so tensive, so flawed, so uncertain. Think for a moment about what happened just 10 or 15 minutes ago. Pick your number in this room or in these Zoom rooms when we were all sitting here or zooming in, how many different perspectives do we all have about that event, that moment of those 10 or 15 minutes ago? If a researcher stepped in now and interviewed each of us, what would the various accounts look like? How would they differ? How subjective, how different, how perspectival? Now imagine that we would base an entire metaphysic, a philosophy of reality, a basis for religion's viability or not, on historical knowledge. Of course, Wheeler's pragmatic historicism is aware of all these complications and builds in an epistemic humility, but I'm not sure all the epistemic humility in the world can adequately account for the extent to which our cognitive access to history is fundamentally and thoroughly problematized. Wheeler states almost as a side glance, or as a truth, that scientism is clearly flawed as an explanatory basis for reality. But why is scientism so clearly flawed? And historicism is so clearly the right candidate as an explanatory basis for understanding reality? I assume it has something to do with the fact that historicism accounts for or allows for much more data and phenomena in its framework than scientism does, perhaps. It includes metaphysics within historicism. But still, this leads me to a perhaps culminating mark or question to Dr. Wheeler. If the present is always disappearing into the past, qua Augustine, and then each present moment becomes lost to the past once it becomes history, then why should the past, this elusive history, be the all-determining measure of how we understand, interpret, and anticipate reality? Why not the present? Or more provocatively, if not absurdly, why not the future? Eschatology. Is there a place for eschatology in Wheeler's pragmatic historicism or in any historicism? I've just broken all the rules of the pragmatic calm, measured rationality. But the point is really this. Does historicism miss something essential about the experience or the reality to which religion gestures or points, since by nature the present and the future seems inherently excluded from it in some way? And here once more my Kierkegaardian stripes show. Kierkegaard critiqued Hegel's historicism on this very point, that he overlooked what stares us so directly in the face, which is that we are existing living beings who encounter the divine in the present moment, not in the past, not in history, and not from some Archimedean point either, from which all of history can be understood. Again, this is not Wheeler's historicism that Kierkegaard was critiquing. But this present, full of power and mystery and the future embracing it, is what Kierkegaard indeed called the moment. Now, this may come off as wishful thinking, like magical thinking, maybe entirely free from any rational constraints, but it does get back to that deep human question: what is the nature of religion? In this sense, I wonder if Wheeler, despite the laudable appeal for retaining metaphysics within pragmatic historicism, has maybe given up too soon on the dynamic, existential, and inbreaking aspects of religion in favor of the standards of a historical past, a past which has already disappeared the very instant it occurred. Thank you.
Well, going last has its limits. Everybody else seems to have said everything there is to be said. And I have to say, damn, you're good, Demian. Let me say, I thank you for inviting me to United for many, many reasons. I taught for almost 30 years at Iliff School of Theology, and we are kind of kindred spirits with this institution. at the edge of certain very constructive and creative edges of theology, with commitments to social justice, trying to contribute to a more inclusive, equitable, and just world. And I am so glad that I got to come here. I'm also glad you were in the state and in these cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, because you've been the epicenter for this nation of struggling with some of our most intrinsic, issues that we are having so much trouble with. And to talk about these issues in this context and to say, do we who are pragmatic historicists have anything to offer, it seems to me is a really important thing. And the best reason is that I get to come and see Demian in action, to hear his incredible work, and the sequel is much better than the original. So thank you for including me. Before engaging some of the specific parts of this quite monumental work, I want to say something about Demian, as I have known him as my student and now as a colleague and a peer. I do so because the qualities of his character deeply shaped the spirit and style of his scholarly efforts, and I am quite sure are also found in how he teaches students and what kind of colleague he is here at United. Stated bluntly, Demian was the student every faculty member wishes to have. We've heard the word passionate. He was passionate about theology, its questions, shortcomings, and possibilities. He loved thinking about hard issues. He was open to being challenged, even discombobulated by what he read and heard. But he was never afraid to engage his fellow students or his teachers critically. In all of this, he just took delight. He had fun. So for those of you who are students, he is the model that you should follow on that. He is also the model as a scholar, both in writing his dissertation and now as those efforts have resulted in this first very, very substantial book. These same characteristics can be seen. Let me enumerate for a moment. This volume testifies to a number of things about Demian as a scholar. He is a big thinker. He engages weighty topics that have bedeviled thinkers forever. He is a comprehensive thinker, following issue to issue, building an ever more encompassing position. And he is a detailed thinker. For those of you who have read the book, you can see how fat it is. You cannot miss the thick descriptions and analysis he offers. This is a book of both breadth and depth. A lot of the book is footnotes. More than this. I've searched for the word to capture what I'm getting at and finally decided that what I want to say is Demian is an ironic thinker and scholar. What do I mean by this? First, it is that he is both generous and fair. As someone whose thought Demian engages both positively and critically, he kind of let me off the critical comments in his opening things, but believe me, they are there. I think he strives to set forth others' positions in their strongest form, not their weakest. He makes the best case for people, even for people with whom he disagrees. Demian, recognizing the limitations and fallibility of all human efforts, embodies in this work what I might call ensemble theology. As an historicist, he draws from multiple sources, gaining insights from far-flung locales. This theology is not the work of one brilliant individual, though I think he is a brilliant individual, but of multiple people collaborating and building together. A number of them are on the Zoom call today. As such, it is dialogical in nature. an invitation to, and the embodiment of a conversation. So with these kinds of remarks as background, let me say something about the content and arguments of the book. You're going to, for those of you who haven't read the book, between Demian and the three of us who are speaking, you don't have to read the book. You'll have all the arguments. I'm only kidding. It's out in paperback. Buy it now. The overarching topic of this book is historicism and its implications for how we understand human existence within wider reality, what Professor Wheeler comes to call nature, and especially the implications for how we might construe theology today. Professor Wheeler offers both a description of the emergence and development of historicism in the modern period and in our current context, and explores issues and constructive proposals that have emerged in relation to historicist sensibilities. By historicism, as you heard a moment ago, Wheeler means the recognition that all human existence, experience, and claims to knowledge emerge in and exist within the complex webs of natural and historical reality. Demian sets this forth in a nuanced and detailed rendering. But generally, let me say, historicists argued that there are no humans in general, only particular humans located in specific times and places, who emerge out of particular strands of history and reside in contexts that are unique, though not unconnected, with the wider web of historical and natural existence. Professor Wheeler traces these ideas from Europe in the late 18th and 19th centuries, especially German thinkers such as Herder and Troeltsch, who set themselves against the anti-historical universalisms of the French and British Enlightenment. From there, he turns to the early 20th century schools of American thought as it took shape, especially in the work of philosophers John Dewey and William James, and the early Chicago School of Religion scholars found at the University of Chicago's Divinity School. Rounding out the descriptive task of this book, Wheeler engages a wide plethora of more contemporary thinkers across a wide range of disciplines. Out of this descriptive tracing, Wheeler sets forth the implication of historicist claims. Human ideas, including ones about God, reality, human existence, nature, are all historical, and as such, they are contingent, fallible, open to criticism, diverse, and plural. Wheeler notes that this is a very anti-authoritarian perspective, rejecting any claims to absolute truth, be they grounded in reason, experience, or revelation, all of which are historicized and hence relativized. All of our ideas are also, as I will return to later, connected to power and to its concrete effects, thus eschewing the turn to from a historicist perspective looks like the problematic universalisms of the Enlightenment. Demian details how many historicists are also pragmatists, centrally concerned with the work our historical contingent ideas do in the world, what implications they hold for human and other than human life, and to the questions of adequacy and what he will call truth. All this leads Demian to a wide variety of topics and issues, and I can't go into all of them. I will say, even more briefly than I said in the remarks I sent to you, he looks at the implications of this for the fact that we have diverse religious perspectives all over the world. How are we to understand their nature and their relationships with one another? I can only say that his dissertation committee said this could have been a book on its own. I still think that, but I think his contribution to these debates, which is so important and so central, I hope you keep following that strand of thought. I'm going to turn to some other issues. He attends to these in great depth, and I cannot do this systematically or fully, but I want to raise the ones that for me are of central importance. One has already been noted. Much of early historicism focused on humans as cultural and linguistic beings. History meant human history, and the webs of reality within which humans existed were social, cultural, and linguistic. While the Germans also made reference to blood and soil, these did not reflect any kind of naturalism, and certainly not a naturalism that located humans within the interconnected and interdependent web of all that is. The overpowering emphasis of the early historicisms was on culture and language. And that has led to charges of a reductionistic linguisticism and even to a kind of idealism. Wheeler details, in contrast, contemporary forms of historicism are also thoroughgoing naturalisms. By this, I think Demian means at least two things. First, that we are bodies. We are embodied creatures. We are bodies as much as minds, and we traffic with reality as much with our bodies as we do with our minds. The second is that humans are part of a vast interconnected web of existence that includes not only conscious beings, but all that exists. This encompassing web Wheeler terms nature. Importantly, Wheeler, along with other contemporary historicists, insists that all of existence, including what he now terms nature, is historical. Thus, he echoes the language of William Dean, who argues for a naturalized historicism and a historicized naturalism. Especially today, when humans have so disastrously impacted the corner of reality we call planet Earth, and with it the prospects of survival for humans and many other living things, the importance of this form of historicized naturalism and naturalized historicism looms large. Now, let me just note again some other things before I move to my final remarks. One of the places that Demian marks his place in this debate is around a revised, or what I think Kyle called a chastened, correspondence theory of truth. He worries that the pragmatism associated with historicism can be reduced to a crude utilitarianism, to what Richard Rorty called a matter of luck and weapons. And for many of us historicists, we don't have luck and we don't have weapons, so we're kind of losing out on that form. Instead, he wants our claims to be tested against what he can from our particular historical realities know about reality. Wheeler is clear that many historicists today, including me and most of the other thinkers he engages, are not only naturalists and historicists, but we're also pragmatists. That is, we have eschewed claims to absolute truth, be they grounded in reason, revelation, or experience. Instead, we have turned to the hard work of testing our ideas in terms of what kind of lives, what possibilities, et cetera, they permit and support, and what they leave out, deny, and resist. For Wheeler, however, in order for pragmatism not to be arbitrary, it must also be grounded in a critical realism. That is, he claims, what makes it useful is its correspondence to the real world. And furthermore, that the real world resists our human imaginings and puts constraints on all of our efforts. I think we could have a long discussion about this, and maybe we will in the after one. But let me just say, I don't think any pragmatists, including people like Richard Rorty, don't also espouse a kind of historicized realism. I think we all think we exist in a real world. We're just not sure how much correspondence theories of truth, how far they're going to get us, okay? Before turning to my concluding remarks, I want to pause for a moment on Wheeler's final chapter, Sacred Conventions and Sacred Nature. As Demian knows, this chapter is the one with which I least identify. It is a rich and important discussion, so I commend all of you read to the end of the book. And I suspect many of you will side with him and Andrea and not me. So we'll see. In this final constructive piece of the work, Demian explores what he sees as a more explicit theological, even religious or spiritual implications of the arguments he's been setting forth. We might think of this as the metaphysical payoff of the picture of reality he has been building. There's so much in this rich chapter. I'm going to kind of pick and choose what grabbed me at the moment of reading it. But much of the discussion revolves around the aligning of the ideas of nature, now as the all-encompassing idea that includes all of reality, with notions both of creativity and mystery, now interpreted as the ultimate reality, the sacred or the divine. Demian looks at a slew of people here, but I'm going to just mention 3 strands, and we could talk about all sorts of other people as well. But I'm going to mention them because I don't think they're all up to the same thing. First, there's Gordon Kaufman. Demian makes the comment that Kaufman is maybe the person in the last 50 or 60 years who developed the implications of these ideas most fully on the theological scene. He developed in his work a notion of theology as imaginative construction, in which humans seek orientation and meaning in the world. In the latter part of his life, he developed out of his conversation with science and with other religious traditions, a view of ultimate reality as cosmic creativity that is ultimately mysterious. Sometimes that mystery is called God by him. But importantly for Kaufman, referring to mystery is neither experiential, nor does it yield any specific knowledge or content. I'm going to quote him. Mystery is fundamentally an intellectual term, not an experiential one. It is the ultimate critical principle, calling attention not to some specific content or experience, but pointing out something about ourselves. And what it points to are our limits and the fallibility of all our efforts to name reality. As such, for Kaufman, it is the bulwark against idolatry. But it doesn't help us very much in terms of gaining orientation in life and building lives of meaning and purpose. For that, he turns to what he also calls God, those cosmic trajectories that have brought forth human life, sustain, and provide the grounds for its continued existence. These are forces within nature. They're smaller than nature, but they are still part of nature, but they are never to be equated with all of existence. Interestingly, he argues that such trajectories are both plural and impersonal. He gave up in the latter part of his life any talk of God as a personal being. He moves back and forth between these two ideas and insists we need both. Early in his work, he called this God the relativizer and God the humanizer. A mediating position is one that Del Brown and Nancy Frankenberry talked about, radical empiricism. Nancy did a much fuller job. Del kind of gestured towards it. But both of them were interested in how we can talk about the fact that we traffic with reality more with our bodies than with our minds, and that there are a whole world of non-conscious or pre-conscious experiences. But for my point, neither of them thought that this was some kind of experience that we could extrapolate and actually know. It was a theoretical claim for them that helped them build a better, more comprehensive understanding of what it meant to be human. The third trajectory that Wheeler engages is what he calls the mystical one. It coheres with Kaufman and other historicists in a profound sense of the mysteriousness of reality, certainly taken as a whole. Hence, we have lots of humility talk and reference, a whole new revival of the via negativa. But there also seem to be empirical claims, tying into claims regarding critical realism and the correspondence theory of truth, about experiencing, albeit vaguely, the whole of reality or its depths or its fullness or whatever. This leaves us humbled and intellectually modest. And for many, Wheeler examines this nature writ large, experienced in the depths of our being, or at least in some people's experience, is what we should mean by God. I'm only going to list a couple implications from that they're of interest to me, but not maybe to other people. First, since the universe is full of potentialities that eventuate in everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, nature is ambiguous and could never be equated with the moral or the good. So to see this as God as the sacred is not just to say that, as it is for Kaufman, that we are at the limits of our human understanding, but to suggest that somehow we should see this ambiguous whole of reality as worthy of devotion. In Wheeler's words, as something that we should enter into covenant with. Beyond this, a number of people who turn in this direction also seem to say that this kind of experience takes place in various historical locales in similar fashion. I must admit, it always felt like a retreat from historicist insights. I admit to having trouble with this. It seems to imply a kind of elite gnosis in which only the few mystics really experienced reality in its totality, or everybody does, but the rest of us just don't know we are doing it. You can see, I don't think I have luck or weapons or mystical experience. The latter feels like a new version of Karl Rahner, who gave us anonymous Christianity. Now we are all anonymous mystics. We just don't know it. Tongue in cheek. There is a little, the tongue in cheek, the kind of funny part of this is because not in Demian, but in some of my other friends, there's a kind of condescension toward those of us who traffic in the non-mystical realm, even some of my closest friends. Suddenly, the language turns to talk of myths, as though our idea of mystery isn't a human construction, of lesser deities, of special interests. In the closing pages of the chapter, many of the people who Demian has examined in relation to this both claim to that this view relativizes them, calls them into question, cuts them down to size, but also that we need to turn to something like Kaufman's God the Humanizer, or Bill Dean's The Sacredist Conventions that can guide us in life. I will only say here that because it was in the closing pages of the book, it all felt too little, too late for me. And that's where I want you to go. In the end, I just want to say a couple more things. Am I really running over on time? I am. All right. All right. Then I'm going to say this and then I'm going to end. This is about Demian, not about me, so I don't have to defend myself. But at various points, he queried in his book that, well, detailing my historicism, naturalism, and pragmatism, he wondered about my theology and the absence of God talk. Let me just say, in contrast to his mystics, worshipers of the whole of nature and the devotees of mystery, who think that somehow we escape special interests, myths, etc. Let me just say, I cast my lot a long time ago with lesser deities. With Kaufman's humanizing trajectories, forces found in reality that might lead to less suffering and a more flourishing of human existence. Demian, in a footnote, said something like she even wants to be a liberation theologian. All right, she even is a liberation theologian. Actually, that's all I ever wanted to be. So let me just, I'm going to end. I'm not going to do the rest because we're out of time. I hope Demian keeps working, not giving up what he has said, but in particular attends to the claim he made that all of our ideas are connected to power. They are all embedded in special interests. And to interrogate pragmatic historicists more clearly about what our vested interests in, and to look more about how our ideas, what work they're doing on the ground, and what work they might do on the ground. because, as I said, I cast my lot a long time ago with those who are saying that what we need to do is ask ourselves how our ideas about reality of human beings, what we devote ourselves to, help or hinder more humane human existence and the creation of a more just world. So that is what I'd love you to do in your next thing. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. I am speechless. No, I'm not speechless. I am painfully mindful of the time. I'll try to move quickly. I cannot possibly in the last 15 minutes, we want to leave some time for questions. Oh my goodness. I cannot possibly give responses that, really, I can't give vigorous and robust responses. It's just impossible in the short time we have left. But let me just give a few preliminary comments to my wonderful interlocutors here. Andrea, thank you so much for sharing that beautifully crafted sermon. I am overcome with gratitude because you've reassured me that maybe a few aspects of my theology can preach. So that makes me happy. And I'm just so gratified and humbled that, my writings, my classes have been impactful for you, not just on your thought, but actually on your ministry and even your spirituality. I'll mention that Andrea mentioned some of my more recent writings where I've set out to explore the spiritual and ethical implications of the kind of theology I lay out in this book. And I'll talk about those a bit more when I return to Sheila's comments. Kyle, you say some really nice things about my book. I really appreciate that. But then he goes on to raise two very critical questions. For the sake of time, I'm going to only tackle one of them because it's a lingering question from the lecture from a few weeks ago. So I want to go there. The bit about history, we're going to have that discussion another time in Kierkegaard and all that. But let me talk about your critique of pluralism, which is fantastic and off base. So Kyle asked me if being a pluralist involves a sense of loss. And the short answer is yes. Andrea mentions Paul Capitz's oft-repeated refrain that there's no such thing as problem-free theology. You just have to decide which problems you're willing to live with. That's a wise comment, in my view. And indeed, one of the things that pluralism requires us to relinquish is our claims to absoluteness, finality, and superiority. But pluralism, at least my particularist version of it, does not require us to relinquish the unique truths of our religion. That is to say, the distinctive and specific commitments and practices and beliefs that make our religion special and indeed worthy of sharing. Pluralism only asks us, really invites us to let go of the presumption that our religion is the exclusively true religion or even the most inclusively true religion. So for me, surrendering our claims to absoluteness and superiority does not require us to surrender our religious particularity or even the unique truths to which our religions bear witness. That's an important distinction, I think. So Kyle, I'm going to counter your question with more questions. Why can't we stake our lives on partial truths? Does my religion need to be the whole truth and the best truth in order to be true? Does it need to be absolute or superior or all-encompassing in order to be fully and passionately committed to it? Also, doesn't a pluralistic understanding of religion expand rather than weaken the truthfulness of religion broadly construed? If other religions are possibly registering aspects of ultimate reality that our religion does not register, then wouldn't our religious vision be enlarged as a result of engaging and learning from those religions? Right? So I want to be clear about this. I don't think, hear me, Kyle. I don't think epistemic humility is an exclusive characteristic of pluralists, right? Some of my best friends are epistemically humble inclusivists. But in my view, epistemically humble pluralism gets us further with respect to deep interreligious learning, because it encourages us to historicize our truths, not abandon those truths. And it encourages us to be open to new truths, truths that would augment rather than diminish our religious worldviews, at least from my perspective. Okay. So I'm going to bracket the question about history so I can respond to some of Sheila's many criticisms and comments. As I noted earlier, my book devotes a lot of space to an appreciative and critical analysis of Sheila's work. So to now witness you engage my work so closely and critically in the presence of my colleagues and my students and my friends, it's overwhelming to me. In ways I can't even begin to express. And I want you to know I'm profoundly grateful. I can't respond to all your criticisms. We could talk on the way to the airport if you want. Yeah, let me get on with it. A few things. One, you didn't say out loud here, but you said in your written remarks that the book kind of smacks of a notion of history as progress. Let me say very clear, history is not progressing. Okay. Yeah, I deeply share your tragic historicism and think that we need to think through what hope means in light of tragedy. So I wanted to just say that. Again, you didn't unpack this in a lot of detail in your spoken comments, but you criticized the book for being insufficiently attentive to the ways in which ideas are interest-laden and imbued with power. My former student, Max, who's up there somewhere, leveled a similar criticism after reading the book. And I think you're both, he clapped. I think you're both spot on. So in my sections on human historicity, I do talk about the ways in which you, Sheila, and Cornell West materialize and politicize historicism, vis-a-vis that reductive linguisticism of other historicists. But you're right, I barely scratched the surface. And there were reasons at the time I chose to focus on other topics, but the insufficient attention to power and ideology and social location, it's a major deficiency of the book. So my next book will be about historicism, religious naturalism, and the problem of evil, with a specific focus on the Holocaust, white supremacy, the coronavirus pandemic, and the climate crisis. And I'll say that questions of power and interests and the concrete effects of our theological ideas will be a major thread running through the book. At least I hope so. A quick bit about the correspondence theory of truth. I knew this would cause you to raise an eyebrow. I was nervous about you even reading it. I agree that most pragmatic historicists are historicized realists. Of course they are. I even acknowledge that Richard Rorty has a very sophisticated perspective on truth. But I do think folks like Rorty kind of dance a little too close to the edge of anti-realism for me, which is why I felt the need to address it in the book, especially considering caricatures of pragmatism as whatever works. So I actually agree with the early pragmatists, what Robert Neville calls the paleo-pragmatists. And that is, it's necessary for our ideas and theories to be constrained by the world. And correspondence with reality is one of the benchmarks of a pragmatically successful hypothesis. And that does not mean that we know the world in some ahistorical or unmediated or absolute way. That's why I'm a critical realist, a constructive realist. So I'll put it bluntly, I think truth matters. I think facts matter. I think we need to at least strive to get reality right, especially now. And why? Because as you say, in your written remarks anyway, we live in an era of truthiness and alternative facts, to use Colbert's language, right? And frankly, that scares the shit out of me. I worry about relativism a lot. So your questions are great. Are truth-telling and rational inquiry enough? No, not at all, right? We need to do much more. We need to pay attention to how ideas and policies affect the most vulnerable among us. We need to contest the social and the cognitive biases, dare I say, the sinful proclivities that prompt us to deny factual evidence in the first place. We need to be more politically savvy, build strategic alliances, and somehow figure out how to live together in the midst of deep and painful polarization. But I also believe that standing on the side of truth is necessary for confronting the monumental problems facing our species, such as white supremacy, planetary catastrophe, and the threat of another pandemic. Sufficient? Nope. Necessary? I think so. Effective? I hope so. All right, finally, on the mystery. I want you to know, I actually feel the force of your objections here. Nancy Frankenberry lays the smackdown on me in a forthcoming review of the book. And she levels very similar criticisms. My friend Dan Ott and I, who's somewhere on this Zoom call, we've actually had a recent dialogue that was published in the American Journal of Theology and Philosophy, where we pretty much had this same debate. So I'll send that to you and you can read it. He's, I think, closer to your position than mine. At least once a week, I wonder whether I'm completely off base and need to just drop the God talk and the mystery talk and the religious naturalism. I mean, half my students think I'm an atheist anyway. And my colleagues certainly do. Nevertheless, my friends, I persist. I convinced Molly a couple of weeks ago, I'm not an atheist, I promise. You know, but I persist, Sheila, in full recognition of the concerns you're raising here. Your comment about the anonymous mystics is hilarious. It's partially fair. Although I want you to know I'm very wary of universalizing experiences, okay, especially religious experiences. I also agree, and Nancy Frankenberry raises the same problem. She's actually shifted quite a bit in recent years. We don't have direct experiences of the mysterious whole. No, and nor does it offer much by way of empirical content. I actually agree, and I say that in the book. But perhaps we can and sometimes do have dim intimations, a felt sense of the mystery, of that interconnected web of which we're a part and on which we depend. Nature, the universe, big history, the ground of being, the whence, God. But even more, and this is, I think, the key point, I think the mystery, the ambiguous whole, the interconnected web, and similar locutions are useful constructions. So yes, they are human, mostly fictional, and myth and interest-laden constructions, as I say on page 341. Oh, well, that's okay. That's okay. I like, William James puts it nicely. He says the trail of the human serpent is over everything. And that includes religious naturalism and the via negativa and all the rest. But I think there's more to reality than the human serpent. And I believe that these theological constructs might help us become oriented to that reality. With respect to Kaufman, I think you're right. He speaks of mystery as fundamentally intellectual, not experiential. But in late career, as my constructive theology students will discover next year, he does come to speak of the mystery in more naturalistic and even realistic terms. And as you point out, he calls that mystery creativity itself, right? And that's at least partially what he means by God, those historical and evolutionary processes on which we depend for our being. For my part, let me say, I find the appeal to mystery and the divinization of nature, creativity, and the like, both appropriate and useful. I think Kaufman and others are right. Acknowledging that we live in face of mystery helps keep idolatry at bay. And this does have profound ethical, political, religious, and ecological ramifications. Idolatry isn't the only problem that we need to concern ourselves with. I fully accept the feminist and womanist critique on that point. But it's a significant problem in my view. Absolutism, nationalism, racism, fanaticism, and anthropocentrism are dangerous idols. I mean, my former student Phil brilliantly laid this out in his MA thesis. And I think what I'm trying to do is put forward a naturalistic theology that relativizes those idols and exposes them as idols. I've also recently argued that divinizing the whole of nature yields a number of other ethical and spiritual fruits, some of which Andrea mentioned in her sermon. I'm not going to repeat that. I'll just say, I don't believe that the ambiguous whole is worthy of devotion. I believe it's worthy of reverence and awe. And that's an important distinction, I think. So I think we have to parse out religious affections with respect to how we relate to various aspects of the divine. So that raised the question, to what do I devote myself then? Well, the lesser deities, the humanizing and liberating gods, Jesus Christ, the liberator. Mystery and ambiguity only get us so far. And so near the end of the book, and even more in my most recent work, I develop a polytheistic pantheism. Humanizing and liberating gods, sacred conventions, and the like are crucial for gaining orientation in life and building lives of meaning and purpose. Is it too little, too late? You're probably right about that, but it's better late than never. So I'll say in closing here, at the end of the day, I agree with Gordon Kaufman that we need both. My students love the both and. We need both the ambiguous mystery of cosmic creativity, and we need the creative trajectories that sustain human existence and humane values. And I agree that they're both worthy of divinization and theological attention, albeit in somewhat different respects. So I had way more to say than that, but I will stop there. I know we're over time, but and some folks need to go to class, but I'm willing to entertain a few questions. Okay. All right. Molly is going to close us at this point. I apologize that this went over time.
Well, it's with epistemic humility that I cut you off at this point. Thank you for this. Almost thou persuadest me. Professor, thank you for coming. Dean, thank you for what you responded. Yes, eschatology. Trustee and Demian student Johnson, thank you. Thank you for your reflection. We invite you to get your book signed and then maybe ask a question or two. And we have cake, wonderful cake that looks like the book. Thank you all for being here.
I'll be around for a while, and Sheila will be too if you want to ask questions and all of that. Zoomers, I guess I'll talk to you soon. Don, I love you all. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so sorry.